I hate that.
So great.
I'm adding this to the video. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Soul Carney. Today, I'm going to be talking about one of my favorite movies of all time, Donnie Darko. This is a movie that is so needlessly complex that there's no way I could possibly explain everything there is to catch in one video. I would need an entire movie's length worth of video to do that, and I just simply don't feel like making that video right now. But what I do want to talk about are certain things about the movie and break down several different of the themes that it explores, and chiefly that being of the search for God. So in order to get a frame of reference for what I'm talking about, I'm going to go through and hit the basic plot points of Donnie Darko and try not to go off on too many side tangents about what certain scenes mean until after I've done the full explanation. So Donnie Darko starts off and introduces us to Donnie Darko, the main character, and he is asleep in the middle of the road out in like the middle of nowhere. He gets up on his feet and gets on his bike and rides back home. And this is our introduction to Donnie. We're given no explanation otherwise as to why he was doing that. We find out that he is suffering from some kind of delusions of some kind, and he's on some sort of medicine and has a therapist. And he refuses to talk to his family, who only seem to care about him, but he sort of pushes them away. We then get another scene of Donnie wandering out of his house at night, and we see this time that he's being called out by this guy whose name is Frank, and he is this like 6 foot tall guy in a bunny suit, basically, and the bunny suit's rather creepy looking and iconic at this point. Frank then tells Donnie that the world is going to end, and he gives him an exact time down to the seconds, and a few other times we see that number come up in the movie. But Donnie wakes up in the morning in the middle of a golf course with that number written on him with a Sharpie on his arm. In the meantime, a jet engine has crashed into Donnie Darko's house and landed in his room where he would have been sleeping. But because he was out, it didn't hit him. More confusingly, no one knows where the jet engine came from. There's no crashed planes or anything of the sort. And the serial number seems to match a plane that has both of its engines, so it doesn't really make sense. What this means is that there is a tangent universe, as they call it, or a parallel universe adjacent to the real world, and that has been opened up, and this is where the jet engine has come from. So a tangent universe is very unstable, and it can collapse and create a black hole, which would then end the primary universe. So that is the warning Donnie's been given, that the world is going to end in 28 days, and that is how long he has to figure out what is going on and close the gap within the tangent universe. Those are the basic plot points of the movie. Now I'm going to start digging into some of the other things. Probably one of the most basic and obvious themes of this movie is that of just teen angst and teen apathy towards what adults want them to do and want them to say. There is a character named Mrs. Farmer. She's a PE teacher, and she's older and very just kind of stereotypical old person in a teen movie type of character. She is very enamored and in awe of this self-help guru guy who has come into the town and is spreading his worldview that he's pressing onto these kids, and it's a self-help sort of idea of there's fear and there's love, and every action you commit falls into one of these two categories. And there's a scene in the movie where there's an exercise that they're doing in which they have to read something off of a card, the students do, and they have to read something off of a card and place a tick mark whether that was fear or love, and they've divided it into two spectrums. And this is some sort of social commentary on the way the American society works. We like things to be simple, and we like them to be in twos. We have two political parties, Pepsi and Coke. We have Ford and Chevy. There's several other options. That's not all there is, but this is what we kind of like to boil them down to in America, is even though there's several other political parties you can vote from, several other sodas you can drink, car companies you can buy from, we like to divide things up into two because we like division, because it gives us something to feel morally superior about. And it's harder to do that the more complicated you make it. And we see in this movie that Donnie, and especially all the other kids, really dislike this and really rebel against it, and that makes everyone mad. We have two characters in this movie that are teachers, and they are outside of this kind of dichotomy of the rest of the teachers, and they're more free-thinking individuals. And one of them has the students read this short story called The Destructors by Graham Greene. It's a real short story, and it's about teens that come in and just tear down this guy's house brick by brick until it's gone, simply just to do it and destroy something, because they think destruction is a form of creation. Keep that phrase in mind for later, but for right now, all you need to know is that Donnie, in one of his delusions from Frank, or one of his visions from Frank, goes and floods the school. Now this does something later, but I'll get into that. I'm going to try to keep it all under one umbrella right now. Donnie floods the school, and it happens in the same way that things happen in this story, the Destructors. And so the parents hold this PTA meeting, and they're outraged that book was being taught in school. That book is inciting fear and not love, tying back into the self-help guy's whole thing. And essentially this leads characters like Donnie's mother to say, well, we don't ban books at this school, but they all kind of shout her down in very passive-aggressive ways, and they decide that they should ban this book, and it ultimately leads to that English teacher being fired. So the teen angst that's shown in this movie is actually shown in a way where it doesn't just seem cheesy and corny like in a lot of other teen movies. It's presented in a very well thought out, very sincere way, and it's very relatable. Anyone who's ever been a teenager, which is everyone, understands and sympathizes with these the feelings that are being presented within these specific moments in the movie. And it's not that this movie has several different plot lines going on at the same time that don't connect with each other. It's because of all the things that are happening within the middle half of the movie that the end is so impactful. And there's a scene when Patrick Swayze's character, who's the self-help guru guy, is given this big assembly, and Donnie goes down to speak into the microphone because they're doing like an open mic question night or something with the guy. And Donnie calls him the Antichrist to his face and causes a big stir, and gets expelled from school because of it.
But I believe you are a very troubled and confused young man. I believe you are searching for the answers in all the wrong places.
You're right, actually. I am I'm pretty troubled, and I'm pretty confused, but I'm afraid, really afraid. Really afraid, but I think you're fucking Antichrist.
All of his friends kind of rally around him about that and think that he was somewhat of a hero for doing that. Everyone at the school is clearly just feeling like this is very dumb, that's being put into their curriculum, and they feel like everyone is so out of touch with how they're actually feeling. That idea is brought across very well throughout this movie. So now we're going to get into the nitty-gritty meat of it. Donnie Darko is a movie about finding your place in the universe and fulfilling your own purpose, or finding God. So what happens in this movie is Donnie Darko is getting these visions from Frank, and Frank is telling him to do all these things. If you remember, like I said earlier, Frank is the 6-foot-tall bunny man. I casually swept by a few things talking about the last point, and those are what I want to kind of go into now. Frank tells Donnie to flood the school. And so he has no recollection of doing this, but we see him doing it in this sort of daze, or in this trance. And he goes in and he takes an axe to the water pipes, floods the school, and buries the axe in the head of the school mascot, which is this big iron bulldog statue out front. It would take someone with incredible strength to do this, so obviously a student isn't necessarily fully suspected, although they do conduct investigations, but it's essentially the equivalent of if something rude was written on a note anonymously and everyone had to go write their name on a board. That's literally the kind of investigation they're doing in this scene. As Frank's grip on Donnie gets stronger, Donnie's apathy for the world around him grows stronger. He cares less and less about everybody, except for this girl named Gretchen, who he wouldn't have met had he not flooded the school.
School's canceled.
Do you want to walk me home?
So essentially we see this kind of coincidence of, oh, he flooded the school, so he got to actually talk to Gretchen and they decided to date. But these coincidences happen a lot, and you start to think maybe they're not a coincidence. Early on in the movie, Donnie is driving with his dad down the road, and they swerve to miss an old lady who's walking down the road. This lady's name is Roberta Sparrow, but everyone just calls her Grandma Death because she's this very, very old lady, and she's not all the way there mentally, and she just kind of wanders around out to her mailbox and back into her house. And the town kind of knows who she is. But anyway, Donnie's dad almost hits her, and they swerve to miss. And they get out of the car to go try to help her back in, and Donnie tells her, oh, no mail today, maybe tomorrow, and tries to walk her back inside, and she grabs him by the ear and whispers something that we don't find out until later, but what she whispered to him was, every living thing dies alone. Now this is something that fills Donnie with a sense of dread, and this hovers over him throughout the rest of the movie. Like I said, that happens very early on before he meets Gretchen and all of those things happen. While out on a date with Gretchen, Frank appears to Donnie in the movie theater. Gretchen is asleep, and we see Frank the rabbit sitting right next to him. This is the first time we see the face under the mask, and it is just a guy with long hair. We don't know who he is, and his eye has been shot out of his head. It's missing one eye. There's a cool line here, and I'm sure there's some significance to it, and I might be able to dissect that as I go on throughout the video. But other than that, it's just a cool line because Donnie asks him, why are you wearing that stupid bunny suit? And Frank replies, why are you wearing that stupid man suit? Cool line, just epic moment. Anyway, Frank tells Donnie he must burn down the self-help guru's house, Patrick Swayze's character's house. So Donnie gets up and does it. While the house burns down, we find out that this guy is running a child-adult videos, just pictures, all of that nasty stuff that goes along with that. That was all in his little dungeon, his little basement. If it hadn't been for Donnie burning it down, that wouldn't have happened. And this guy wouldn't have been arrested and apprehended. Now, Mrs. Farmer, who I've discussed, is one of the biggest fans of this guy. Obviously is upset by this and tries to defend him, saying that it's not true. She doesn't believe it, even though they did find everything in his house. So we see this sort of delusion when these people we think are good come out to be just scumbags, and there's this sort of want to defend when there's really no need to. Simply put, this guy was bad. While talking to his therapist, Donnie Darko speaks to her about his concerns about how he's been trying to look for God, and he's decided that he doesn't want to think about it anymore. He thinks the search for God is meaningless if everyone dies alone. But what Donnie figures out, and basically what is happening within this movie, is that he is something called a living receiver. He has this fourth dimensional power of telekinesis and super strength and all of these things that allows him to close and destroy the tangent universe before it can collapse into a black hole and destroy the regular universe. So that is Donnie's mission in this movie. That is his purpose. And everything that happens within this movie happens for a reason. There are two different kinds of people within tangent universes. There's the manipulated living and the manipulated dead. Everyone falls under one of these two categories besides Donnie, who is the living receiver. Now, the manipulated living are his teachers and his classmates and his friends. The manipulated dead are people like Frank and, as we'll soon find out, his girlfriend. Donnie sees these orbs coming out of people one night, and he feels very strange about this because these orbs are sort of going in the path that these people ended up walking. One of them led him to a gun. So he goes to his science teacher about this, and he gives him a book. He speaks all theoretically. He doesn't say this is actually happening to him. But his science teacher gives him a book called The Philosophy of Time Travel, written by Roberta Sparrow, who is Grandma Death. So this is where all that information comes from. This is where Donnie finds out that he is a living receiver, and that the people around him are the manipulated living, and that Frank is a manipulated dead. And everything that happens in this movie happens in order to get Donnie to the point he needs to be to close the hole in the tangent universe. The reason this tangent universe is dangerous is because an object from it made its way into the ordinary universe, and that is the jet engine that crashed into his room. So what Donnie has to do is he has to move the jet engine back into the regular universe because he has slipped into the tangent universe, and that's where most of this movie takes place. I've seen a few theories that say the movie takes place in the regular universe and there's just like a time travel scene at the end. I rather subscribe to the idea that we're seeing Donnie from the tangent universe, recognizing what is happening and closing it so that what happens in that tangent universe doesn't happen in the real universe to the real people that Donnie actually cares about. So Donnie and his sister have this Halloween party. It's here that Donnie and Gretchen really confess how much they love each other. And Donnie, you can tell he knows what he has to do at this point, even though we as an audience do not. Now, there's someone at this party named Frank, and that, as we know, is the guy who is in the bunny suit who has been giving Donnie all these instructions this whole time. Donnie, his girlfriend, and his two friends ride out to Roberta Sparrow's house. Earlier on in the movie, the last scene we see with Donnie's English teacher before she is fired is that Donnie goes in to talk to her, and she's written on the board the word cellar door, and she says that some great author said that cellar door is the most beautiful word he's ever seen. And this is just so, you're just thinking, this is so random and weird. Until they get to Roberta Sparrow's house, and Donnie sees that she has a cellar door. And he goes and opens the cellar door, and these two bullies that we've seen the whole time, also like Seth Rogen's first role in a movie ever, they come out and they attack Donnie, they push him out into the road, and Donnie gets pushed into the road, and Gretchen, his girlfriend, get pushed in the road. Gretchen falls, his car comes rolling in, and it swerves to miss Roberta Sparrow, who's now just wandered out of her house, and it hits Gretchen and kills her. Stepping out of the car is a man in a bunny suit. It's the same bunny suit we've seen throughout the whole movie. And in this universe is Frank, who is just a normal guy dressed up for a Halloween party. And Donnie shoots him in the eye. So this means that the Frank that we've seen throughout this whole movie was this Frank time traveling back and talking to Donnie and getting him to this point that he needs to shut down this other universe. Donnie then takes his girlfriend Gretchen, puts her in a car, drives out to this point. There's a storm brewing, and he's doing it with his mind. He's using his telekinesis to make this storm. He rips the jet engine off of a plane and sends it into the other universe. And this is where we see Donnie Darko waking up in his bed, and he sits up and he starts laughing. Because there's certain segments of the book, The Philosophy of Time Travel, that say when the people wake up in the regular universe, they will have memories of what happened in the tangent universe. So this can be seen as Donnie waking up and thinking it was all a dream. But I don't quite see it this way. This is a kid who is lost and who hasn't been able to find his purpose, and he's been rebelling against all these things, doesn't know if he believes in the concept of God that has been presented to him. But by the end of this movie, he decides that everything that has happened was curated by God to come into this one section of just saving the world. And Donnie was the receiver of that task, and he's fulfilled his purpose. So when he wakes up, he has this sense of accomplishment, this sense of purpose. His life is complete. He's done what he is here to do. So he's laughing in joy. He's finally found his purpose. And with the comfort of this, he rolls over and goes to bed, and the jet engine crashes down on him, and Donnie Darko in the real world is dead. We get a final shot of all of the people who were affected by the story now awake in the regular universe, remembering things that happened to them in their dreams, and these were what occurred throughout the rest of the movie, which took place in the tangent universe. But they remember it. They have vague memories of what happened. And even those who hadn't even met Donnie yet, like Gretchen, have this vague deja vu moment of something significant just happened, and they have no idea what it is. I doubt anyone would say that the final scene of this movie is happy, but I'm going to say it. The final scene of this movie is a happy ending. The world was saved, and Donnie found his purpose. When you allow yourself to work within God's channel, which is how they describe it in this movie, you can find a greater sense of purpose and your true purpose in life. And this is what I truly believe. So, I think this is a happy movie. It's one of my favorites. There's absolutely no way you'll understand it from one viewing. And there's absolutely no way you'll understand it if you only watch the theatrical cut. You either have to watch videos like this one, or like 4 or 5 others I've seen, or the director's cut, which gives a lot more information. But this movie was made purposely ambiguous. There's so many different meanings that you could draw from it. This is just my meaning. I hope this was a coherent video. I hope this made sense. See you on the next one.